What is up, creatives? This is Tom. Welcome back to another Budget Wednesday. In this one, what we're going to be going through is 3 of my favorite budget lenses for the Sony E-mount system: the Sigma 16mm f1.4, the Sigma 30mm f1.4, and the Viltrox 85mm f1.8. Alright, so if you don't know, Budget Wednesday is a weekly series where we go through some affordable camera gear or show you some sort of tip or tutorial to level up your photo or video. So if you want to be notified about the next episode, hit the subscribe button and the bell to be notified about that. So today we're talking Sony mirrorless. Now, so I have with me my Sony A6500. This has just been an absolute workhorse of a camera. I've used it so much over the past couple of years. I particularly enjoy traveling with this little camera because it is so tiny. I like to keep a cage on it just to make it ever so slightly larger because it is really just an absolute tiny camera body. So as I mentioned in the intro, what I want to do today is take you through sort of a selection, or take you through some of my lens choices, particularly budget lens choices for the Sony E-mount system. I guess with a focus on the APS-C mounts, so the A6500, A6300, A6400, things like that. So as mentioned, we have the Sigma 16mm f1.4, the Sigma 30mm f1.4 that I have on this camera here, and then the Viltrox 85mm f1.8. These are 3 pretty affordable lens choices for the Sony E-mount system. All of them are going to run you about $300, around that sort of mark. And these lenses are all great and special in their own particular way. The Sigma 16mm is just one of the sharpest lenses I think I might have ever used. Hardly any distortion around the edges of the frame. And of course that f1.4 means you're getting super silky depth of field along with fantastic low light. It's just a dream of a lens to travel with, particularly because you're going to be able to just get incredible wide shots. That paired with the Sigma 30mm, again, just an incredibly sharp, incredibly functional lens. If I had to pick one out of the 3, it would be this one, just because it is such an all-rounder. You can pretty much do everything from landscapes to close-ups to portraits with this lens. The crop factor on Sony's APS-C system means the relevant or equivalent focal length of these 30mm f1.4 is going to be around about 45mm, so you're getting pretty close to that 50mm focal range. If you had one lens for the rest of your life, you're probably going to want to choose around that 50mm range. And then we get into the Viltrox 85mm. I've particularly been enjoying this for street photography, and I've done a dedicated video on street photography with the Viltrox 85mm, so I'll link that if you want to check that out. But again, I've just been thoroughly impressed with this Viltrox glass, and having these focal ranges from 16, 30 and 85 basically means that you are just sort of hitting or almost every shot that you're going to want to take using one of these cameras. I guess with the exception of telephoto. Obviously we don't have a telephoto lens here, and I will just give one shout out to the Sony 50mm f1.8, the budget nifty 50. I would just thoroughly recommend every photographer or videographer to have a nifty 50 lens. Ironically, I actually don't have a nifty 50 right now for the Sony system, but I think it's such an affordable lens, you should definitely include that in your kit bag. Budget Wednesday is of course a series based on price, so I think what probably makes sense is to talk about these lenses and their relevant price points, and I guess compare it to a almost like for like Sony lens, or at least their closest Sony equivalent. Now for the Sigma 16mm, I think we're probably getting closest to the Sony 24mm G Master. Now of course that lens is just entirely ridiculous and in a league of its own in terms of image quality, so I think what's probably best is to compare both the Sigma 16mm and the Sigma 30mm with the Sony 16 to 35mm zoom. Of course you are getting a zoom range between those focal lengths, and you're getting a 16 and a 30mm prime lens. So if you're wanting the zoom, of course you're going to want to stick with that option. However, for about $600 you can get both of those Sigma lenses. That's $1,000 plus for that 16 to 35mm zoom, and on the Sigmas you're getting a low aperture, you're getting a 1.4 aperture, which means that you are going to be able to get far greater depth of field and far greater quality of background blur if you're wanting to completely stop down on the lens and get a nice shallow depth of field. And again, of course, you don't get that zoom potential, so you're not going to be able to shoot around that 24mm area. But again, considering that lens is about $1,200, the Sony 24mm G Master, I'd say you're getting a pretty good deal. So now with the Viltrox 85mm f1.8, probably the closest is actually a Sony 85mm f1.8. Sony have a native lens, which is basically a direct comparison to this glass, and this lens is about half the price of that lens. And as I've been so thoroughly impressed with this glass, and I do not, just a quick disclaimer, I do not own that Sony 85mm f1.8. I've not shot with it. However, I will link a couple of comparisons down below in the description, and it seems that this glass definitely holds its own in terms of comparative shots. It really does say a lot that the image quality is even comparable. Again, this lens is just half the price. From my testing, things like autofocus and also sharpness are just incredible on this lens, considering it is quote unquote budget. I'm actually using a Viltrox speed booster to adapt the Sigma 18 to 35mm lens onto my Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera. I'm using that right now. I think Viltrox is a company that's doing quite a lot in terms of innovation in bringing affordable camera options, affordable budget gear options, and they're doing a great job and not compromising quality on a massive basis. Very excited to see what they come out with in the future. So there we go, there's a look at some of my favorite choices in terms of budget lenses for the Sony E-mount system. If you guys are shooting on particularly budget lenses for whatever system of camera you shoot with, please let me know in the comments down below. I'd be very interested to hear what those are. I personally think that these are just such a good selection of all-round focal lengths. I think if you could also squeeze that 50mm, that Sony 50mm f1.8 into the collection, and then again, you're pretty much covering off almost every shot you're ever going to want to take with the Sony E-mount system, and you've got it all on a selection of primes, so you're going to get great image quality. You've got a lens for wides, landscapes, you've got a lens for product photography or street photography, and then you've got a perfect lens for portraits in that 85mm. These lenses all just pose incredible value for their price points. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. Please let me know what you thought down below in the comments, and I will catch you guys next time.